Ever since I was a child, I've had a strange connection with horror stories. But it wasn't until I, a 37-year-old librarian named Arthur, moved to a remote village in Scotland called Glenbarr, that this connection took a dark turn I never imagined. Glenbarr was a place where time seemed to stand still, where legends were more alive than reality itself, and where the constant mist hid secrets that no light could reveal. The village, with just over 600 inhabitants, appeared tranquil to visitors. But those who lived there knew there was something very wrong beneath that apparent calm. My move happened on a grey autumn afternoon, when the cold wind carried the scent of moss and wet earth. I had accepted a temporary job at the local library, an old building made of dark stone that creaked with every gust of wind. From the first few days, I noticed that the residents avoided talking about certain places, especially an old, abandoned mansion called Hollow Manor, located on the outskirts of the village, shrouded by a dense and suffocating forest. Stories about Hollow were passed by word of mouth, with fear and reverence, as if that place were the origin of all evil that haunted Glenbarr. Curiosity overwhelmed me, and despite the warnings from the few residents who spoke to me, I decided to investigate. One night, armed only with a flashlight and an old camera, I walked to the mansion. The forest seemed to close behind me, each step echoing in a deathly silence, as if something were watching. When I arrived in front of the wooden door, already showing signs of decay and rust, a chill ran down my spine. I pushed the door with effort, and a shrill creak spread through the interior, awakening a suffocating sense of abandonment and malice. Inside the mansion, the walls were covered with black mold. Torn curtains swayed with the cold wind, entering through the broken windows. In the center of the main room, a large, antique mirror reflected the faint light of my flashlight. But something was wrong. The reflection seemed distorted, as if it had a life of its own. When I looked again, I could see behind my reflection a hooded figure, motionless, staring at me with empty eyes and a macabre smile I will never forget. I froze in place, my breathing heavy, and when I tried to retreat, a voice whispered in my ear, "You shouldn't be here." I fled that mansion that night, but not without carrying an invisible mark with me. In the days that followed, horrifying dreams began to haunt me. Images of unknown people, faces disfigured by fear and pain, whispers coming from the darkness, and a constant feeling that I was being watched. One of the residents, an old lady named Fiona, a 58-year-old former teacher, told me that Hollow Manor had been the scene of rituals centuries ago and that the spirits trapped there sought revenge. A week after my visit, I found the body of a 22-year-old young fisherman named Callum, floating in the lake near the village, with deep marks on his neck and a look of terror forever frozen in his eyes. Official investigations declared the cause unknown, but the residents knew it was the work of whatever lived in the forest, in the mansion, and that it was after anyone who dared to approach. Callum was not the first victim, nor would he be the last. Fear spread like an invisible virus through the village. The nights became longer, the voices in dreams more intense, and disappearances began to be frequent. I myself sometimes felt a presence beside me while working in the library. A shadow that never fully revealed itself, a faint whisper that seemed to speak my name with a mixture of despair and hatred. The darkness of Glenbarr was not just an absence of light. It was a living presence that sucked the sanity out of anyone who dared to challenge its limits. But the story that marked me most happened on a cold December night. I had stayed late at the library, researching old documents about the village, when I heard footsteps on the stairs. I thought it was Fiona coming home, but when I turned, there was no one. Only the echo of the footsteps continued, getting closer and closer until the door slowly opened, revealing a child, or so it seemed. A boy about 10 years old, with eyes as black as coal, and a smile that didn't reach his face. He said nothing, just pointed to an old book about local curses, which was dusty on the table. I tried to talk to him, but he disappeared before I could say a word. Since then, the atmosphere in the village has become unbearable. The number of people who disappear or are found dead has increased, all with inexplicable signs and expressions of absolute terror. The elders say that Glenbarr is cursed, that the mansion is a portal to another world, a place where souls are trapped in eternal suffering. I don't know how much longer I can endure, but one thing I know: the truth is out there, hidden in the shadows, waiting to be revealed, and perhaps to take me with it. The days following the encounter with the black-eyed child were a torment. Hollow Manor now seemed not just a distant place, but a shadow that followed my every step, a presence I felt even in the most illuminated corners of the library. I found myself compelled to investigate the origins of that curse, tirelessly researching forgotten books, ancient accounts, and even hidden diaries that I managed to unearth with the help of Fiona, the teacher. She had lived her entire life in Glenbarr and seemed to carry in her gaze the pain of someone who had lost many friends to that place. I discovered that, in the 18th century, Hollow Manor had been owned by a family who practiced obscure rituals to preserve youth and eternal life. They had made a pact with an entity that did not belong to this world, a presence that fed on fear and suffering, keeping trapped the spirits of those who dared to defy its dominion. Gradually, the mansion became an epicenter of horror, where children disappeared, adults went mad, and a black fog emerged to consume everything in its path. That night, as I reviewed the records, I felt something different. The darkness in the library seemed to condense, and a deep, distant voice began to sing a disjointed melody, like a lament from the abyss. The temperature dropped drastically, and my fingers began to tingle, as if tiny, invisible needles were piercing me. I tried to ignore it, but the air felt heavier, suffocating, and a dark figure emerged between the bookshelves, moving slowly as if floating. It was the black-eyed child. But now there was no more innocence in that gaze, only cold malice and infinite sadness. Before I could react, the figure extended its hand, and a paralyzing cold enveloped my body. I was forced to watch, helpless, as a black mist emerged from its palm and invaded my lungs, like a poison slowly consuming my essence. For weeks, I lost control of myself. Dreams became endless nightmares, voices calling me to enter the mansion, shadows dancing at the edge of my vision, and the constant feeling that someone or something was watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. The entire village was trapped in a cycle of terror. People disappeared without a trace. Others were found in deplorable states, as if they had been tortured by invisible forces. My best friend in the village, a 29-year-old mechanic named Ewan, didn't survive. His body was found among fallen trees, in the forest, with deep, symmetrical marks on his chest, as if he had been pierced by sharp claws. I felt that the mansion was not just a cursed place, but a prison for something much older, much darker than anyone could imagine. The presence I had felt the night before seemed to grow stronger each day, as if it were strengthening with the collective fear of the residents. On a particularly cold night, Fiona called me desperately, saying she had seen strange lights coming from the forest, as if the mansion was breathing, alive in the darkness. We then decided that I should return to Hollow Manor, but this time not alone. Fiona, despite her age, was determined to confront what had haunted her for decades. We brought some protections, ancient amulets, blessed candles, and a silver knife that, according to her, had been passed down for generations to combat the evil that haunted Glenbarr. When we entered, the atmosphere seemed even denser, as if we were entering a dark womb where hope did not exist. The house was different, more alive, with walls that seemed to pulsate and a constant sound, a whisper that seemed to come from all. directions. Suddenly, an enormous shadow emerged from the ground, a creature made of black mist, red eyes, and sharp teeth that gleamed in the dark. It was the entity with whom the 18th century family had made a pact, a monster that fed on pain, fear, and death. We tried to flee, but the door we entered through slammed shut. Fiona held the silver knife and tried to confront the creature, but it was too fast. In a brutal move, the creature snatched the knife from her hands and flung it against the wall, where it shattered. With a scream that seemed to come from the depths of hell, the creature lunged at Fiona, who fell to the ground, her eyes slowly losing the sparkle of life. I ran to try to save my friend, but I felt my strength abandoning me, as if the black mist that enveloped us was consuming my soul. Before everything went dark, I heard the child's voice, now laughing, a sound that pierced me like cold steel. When I woke up, I was alone, surrounded by the heavy silence of the mansion, with Fiona gone and my body marked by scratches that slowly bled. Since that night, nothing has been the same. The village seems like an invisible battlefield, and I, marked by what I saw and lived, have become part of this macabre story, carrying with me the physical and spiritual scars of a real nightmare. The entity seems to be always lurking, ready to claim more souls and spread its reign of terror across the world. Before continuing, I want to make you a different invitation. If you're feeling a chill down your spine and a shiver of fear while listening to this story, how about leaving a word in the comments that represents the feeling this account awakened in you? It can be a single term, an emoji, or even a short phrase that explains what went through your mind. I want to see how this fear is manifesting in each of you, and together we can understand how far this darkness goes. Oh, and if you haven't already, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel. Here, we explore the deepest terrors that humanity tries to forget, but which are very close, lurking. When the sun finally rose, it didn't bring the peace I expected. Hollow Manor remained a place of living shadows and bloody memories. I could barely keep my eyes open, but I needed to understand what had happened to Fiona, and even more so, what that entity truly wanted. In the suffocating silence of dawn, I found a strange symbol drawn in the main hallway with a dark ink that seemed fresh, almost pulsating, as if breathing with me. It was an incomplete circle, with twisted lines that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, an invitation or a trap. I knew that symbol was not the work of human hands, but a mark left by the creature to warn that it was still there, waiting. The days that followed were a blur of terror and pain. People in the village began to disappear at alarming rates. Martha, the 48-year-old librarian who had helped me research the mansion's history, vanished without a trace. In the place where her body should have been found, there was only a trail of ashes and a nauseating sense of despair. That place seemed to turn life into nothing, leaving only fear and emptiness. Those who were lucky enough to survive were visibly changed, their eyes empty, their voices cold, as if the mansion itself had slowly stolen their souls. One night, while trying to sleep, I was woken by an agonizing scream coming from the nearby forest. I ran outside and saw a stumbling figure covered in blood and mud, throwing himself against the trees as if trying to escape something invisible. It was Gregor, a 60-year-old old farmer, known for his strength and courage. When I reached him, his eyes were dilated, his face contorted by pain and terror. "It's not just the mansion, it's in the forest too. They are everywhere," was all he could say before falling dead at my feet, his body marked by deep, perfectly circular wounds, as if he had been pierced by invisible needles. I knew I was running out of time. The entity not only dominated the mansion, but had already spread throughout the village, spreading its poison like a silent plague. And every time the black mist appeared, more people disappeared or died horribly. I could no longer run. I had to confront it, even if it meant my own destruction. I returned to the mansion, this time armed only with my courage and the little knowledge I had accumulated. The walls seemed to breathe, the shadows contorting into grotesque shapes that whispered ancient and cursed secrets. In the center of the main hall, I found a macabre altar covered with bones and black candles, where the creature seemed to feed on the fear and death of its victims. There, amidst the absolute darkness, the entity appeared. Its form was undefined, but its red eyes gleamed with a cruel and ancient intelligence. The voice that came from it was not a voice, but a sensation that invaded my mind. A promise of eternal pain, of being devoured until the last breath, of never finding peace again. I felt my body being pulled into the black mist, but I resisted. I used the amulet Fiona had given me, and a faint light spread, pushing away the shadows for a moment. In that moment of the entity's weakness, I felt a strong presence behind me. It was Fiona's spirit, who had given me the amulet, now free from the curse, illuminating the hall with a pure white light. She pulled me out of the circle to a place where the darkness could not reach me, and together we watched the mansion collapse in a crescendo of screams and black flames, as if hell itself was being sealed forever. But there was a price. When the light dissipated, I realized that part of the darkness had followed me, a constant cold that no one else could see, a whisper in the silence that only I heard, and the certainty that the curse had not completely ended, it had only changed form. And have you ever felt that something that seemed defeated within you was still there, waiting for the right moment to return? If so, tell us in the comments. Your experience could be the key to helping other people who feel this burden. If you're enjoying this story and want to join our community of shadow hunters, take the opportunity to subscribe, because there's still a lot to discover. Even with Fiona's light pushing the entity away, the feeling that something dark still accompanied me became impossible to ignore. Days later, I began to notice shadows moving in the corner of my eyes, inaudible whispers that seemed like forgotten secrets trying to escape my mind. That curse, though weakened, had left an indelible mark on my soul, an invisible link that kept me trapped between two worlds. I avoided the mansion, of course, but the feeling of being watched never left me. During endless nights, the nightmares became more real than wakefulness itself. I saw familiar faces distorted by pain, heard screams of despair that ripped me from sleep, and on one of these occasions, I woke up with deep scratches on my back that no one, not even I, could explain. I began to suspect that the entity had left a window to enter, a dark vestige that only fed on fear to grow. That's when I decided I couldn't stay put. I used the little knowledge I had gained to seek help. I contacted specialists in paranormal phenomena, people who understand more than us about what cannot be explained. From them, I learned that some curses do not break completely with a single ritual, that certain pacts are renewed with our own energy, our fear and doubt. The process would be long and painful. Today, I share this story so that no one falls into the same mistake I did. Darkness often isn't just outside, in the shadows of the forest, or in abandoned houses. It settles within us, in the memories we reject, in the pains we pretend not to feel. And facing this darkness requires courage, not just to fight monsters, but to look inward and accept what we find there. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated with you, how about becoming part of our community? Subscribe to the channel for more accounts that defy logic and sanity, and share your own supernatural experience in the comments. What was the scariest moment you've ever lived? What did this story teach you about fear and courage? Let's build a space together where terror unites real people who face the unknown every day. Until the next story, and remember, darkness always lurks, but the light of community is what keeps us strong.